Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 patch 2.4.3 Season 9 video on the best builds for pushing the solo Greater Rift leaderboards. In a future video, we'll take a look at group pushing. Here's a too long didn't watch version of this video. The meta is largely the same as it has been in the past couple seasons, with a few surprises and one major upset. That's a too long didn't watch. So now, let's take a look at the top 10 best builds pushing into the solo Greater Rift leaderboards. Note that we are still very early in the season, and this data was collected on January 16th across the Americas region, Europe, and Asia. We do expect things to change by the end of the season, but this will serve as a pretty good prediction of what's to come. And we'll keep following the progression of the meta throughout the season and keep you updated on how these top builds might change. So coming in at number 10 with a Greater Rift clear of 90 from the European region, we have the Legacy of Nightmares LASHING TAILKICK monk. On our previous top 10 list, this build came in at number 5, and it's capable of clearing at least into the mid-90s. The Sunwukko variant, which is a lot easier to gear for, and in fact this season you gain the Sunwukko set for free through Season Journey. The Sunwukko variant is only slightly less powerful, still able to clear into the mid-90s. The Uliana monk, which came in at number 6 on our previous top 10 list, is nowhere to be seen on the leaderboards, despite it being able to clear into the mid-90s. Overall, monks just aren't very popular on these solo Greater Rift leaderboards this season, which are dominated by wizards, with the Crusader coming in as a clear number 2 most popular Greater Rift solo pushing class. We have one more monk build that we're going to cover on this top 10 list, but for whatever reason, it seems that monks just aren't really popular when it comes to Greater Rift pushing right now. Hopefully that's going to change as the weeks go on, but currently monk is the class whose potential is being used the least. Coming in at number 9 with a Greater Rift clear of 90 from the Americas is the Charge Barb. In our previous top 10 list, the Charge Barb was tied with the Uliana monk for number 6. And if monks aren't popular this season, the barbarian leaderboards are a wasteland. This is literally the only solo Greater Rift barbarian clear that did a 90 or above. And that's across 3 servers. Barbarians have not been popular for solo pushing for a while now, but this is possibly rock bottom for them. I do expect to see a Legacy of Nightmares Thorns barbarian build rise as the season goes by. Again, Legacy of Nightmares builds are difficult to gear for. We're barely 2 weeks into a season, so it's going to take some time to get these builds together. And I do expect to see barbarians eventually rise to the mid-90s. The Whirlwind Barbarian is more viable now than it was in the past, mostly thanks to density changes that have been made in Greater Rifts. And the Leapquake Barbarian was always able to get at least into the high 80s, but overall, Barbarian is just not one of the best solo pushing classes. Coming in at number 8 with a Greater Rift clear of 92 from the Asian server, we have a Legacy of Nightmares Fan of Knives Demon Hunter. This build landed in a respectable number 4 spot on our previous top 10 list, and I believe it will remain the best Demon Hunter build, despite another one currently topping the leaderboards. By the end of the season, I expect to see at least high 90s clears with this build, but again, it's Legacy of Nightmares, so it's going to take a little time to get it geared up. Coming in at number 7 with a Greater Rift clear of 92 from the European server, we have the RAIMENT Generator Monk. This build and monks in general have fallen considerably since our previous top 10 video, where this build came in at number 3. I do expect to see monks rise in popularity on the leaderboards as the season goes by, and this build will be able to land in the upper 90s. But as we said, monks are currently suffering some kind of popularity problem that I can't quite explain, even though this build remains the most powerful and most popular monk build. One possible explanation is that this build perhaps benefits even more than other builds from having a lot of Paragon levels, a lot of Calison's Despair, a lot of high-level gems, because it is very glass cannon. In fact, it is possibly the most glass cannon build on this entire list. Coming in at number 6 with a Greater Rift clear of 92 from the American server is the FIREBIRD Archon Wizard. This is a huge drop for the FIREBIRD Archon Wizard, which in our previous top 10 video came in at number 1 with a Greater Rift clear of 100. The set has not been nerfed in any way, but the overwhelming majority of top leaderboard clearing wizards are not using this build. Because after many seasons without change, a new powerful wizard build has emerged, which we'll cover in a bit. I did not expect this massive drop in Firebird popularity, and I question whether it's simply the result of wizard players being bored of Firebirds, or maybe because it's more difficult to gear for than the other wizard build that we'll cover. Regardless, Firebirds can still clear at least a Greater Rift 100, and I look forward to seeing whether over the course of the season, Firebirds will re-emerge as the dominant build, or if it'll be completely phased out by the new wizard build. Coming in at number 5 with a Greater Rift clear of 93 from the European server, we have the ARACHYR FIREBATS Witch Doctor. When we made our previous top 10 build list, Firebat builds were just entering the meta for solo Greater Rift pushing. With the buff that the ARACHYR set received in patch 2.4.3, it's no surprise to see this build climb even higher in popularity, rising by 2 spots on our top 10 list. And it won't be long before we see Witch Doctors clearing over Greater Rift 95. Helltooth and Jade Witch Doctors previously made it onto our top 10 list, and while they are no less powerful now, the ARACHYR buff has widened the power gap, thus pushing these sets further away from the meta. Helltooth pet build can still clear into the mid-90s, Jade can still clear into the low 90s, and while we may see Helltooth make a bit of an appearance this season on the leaderboards, I think at this point Jade has just been pushed a little bit too far away power-wise. Coming in at number 4 with a Greater Rift clear of 94 from the European server, we have the Crusader HAMMERDIN. In our previous top 10 list, the HAMMERDIN came in at number 8, and it has risen significantly now thanks to the buff it received via its new item, Faithful Memory. The majority of Crusader clears in the 90s were actually done by HAMMERDINs, rather than what you would expect, the Legacy of Nightmares bombardment build. And this is likely due to the ease, or the relative ease, of putting together a HAMMERDIN build versus a Lawn Bomb Crusader. The Invoker Crusader, which came in at number 9 on our previous top 10 list, is all but phased out now, because while the HAMMERDIN and Invoker were previously roughly similar in power, with the HAMMERDIN beating it out only by a small margin, that power gap has widened so much now that HAMMERDIN is a much better set used for farming up for your Legacy of Nightmares build. Invokers could still clear into the low 90s, but the buffed HAMMERDIN has effectively rendered it obsolete. And given a few more weeks, I do expect the Lawn Bomb Crusader to retake its throne as the dominant Crusader build. Coming in at number 3 with a Greater Rift clear of 95 from the European server, we have the Lawn Bomb Crusader. Again, HAMMERDINs are vastly more popular, and this is just a small example that Lawn Bomb is more powerful. This build landed in our number 2 spot in our previous top 10 video, and I do expect to see it rise again. As players manage to gear up their Ancients for this build, I expect to see Lawn Bomb Crusaders clearing in the high 90s in the not too distant future. Coming in at number 2, with a Greater Rift clear of 97 from the European server, we have the Grenade Marauder Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter is really benefiting from the late PTR Marauder set buffs, which combined with the new item, the Hellcat Waistguard, which buffs grenades, comes together in a very powerful build. Coming into the season, we knew that this build could clear into the mid-90s, but expert Demon Hunter player Wujo came out of nowhere with this impressive Greater Rift 97 clear. No other Demon Hunter even comes close. The next highest clear is a 92. Honestly, this is more of a testament to Wujo's skill as a player than to the build itself, which is likely to be eventually surpassed by the much more difficult to gear for Legacy of Nightmares Fan of Knives build. Still, the Marauder is a powerful build in its own right, and Wujo has only proven just how far it could be taken. And he's also proven that many strong builds, even though they might not be the absolute best build, can still get you into the Greater Rift 90s without thousands of Paragon levels, without a ton of Calison's Despair augments, without level 500 million gems. All it takes is skill, strategy, and a little bit of luck. Now, just a quick comment on another Demon Hunter build that just squeezed its way in our top 10 build list in the past. Coming in at number 10, it was the Shadow Marauder build. That cleared into the low 90s, but with Marauder being buffed so significantly, Shadow Marauder has been completely eclipsed and pushed out of a meta that it was barely clinging onto. Now lastly, coming in at number 1 with a Greater Rift clear of 99 from the European server, we have the Lightning Archon Wizard. So the Wizard does retain its throne as the number 1 best solo pushing class. But the Lightning Archon truly was the dark horse in this race. Already clearing Greater Rift 99, it'll definitely clear over Greater Rift 100, and is favored incredibly more in popularity amongst Wizard players. Nearly 70% of all Greater Rift clears over 90 were done by Wizard players. And the majority of those clears, and the highest of those clears, were done by Lightning Wizards. Now, my prediction had been that the Firebird Archon would remain more powerful, that it could deal more damage than the Lightning Archon. So I'm really surprised by this result. Again, I'm really curious to see if by the end of the season, Firebird Archon will reemerge as the dominant build or not. Now, one factor here might be that it is easier to gear for a Lightning Wizard than a Firebird Archon, because Firebird Archon basically leaves you with no room for variety. Every item piece is locked in, whereas we're seeing tons of variety still amongst Lightning Wizards, which is fantastic for the game. You're seeing different items, different skills, and none is clearly dominant yet. While it is normal for, as the season progresses, one of these variants to emerge as the best, because you'll have sort of a convergence of the evolution of these builds as people will see, okay, that guy's clearing such Greater Rift with his variant, let me tweak it that way. We'll see this convergence, but right now we're seeing tons of Greater Rift clears in the 90s, in the mid, in the high 90s, all with different variants, proving that they are all viable. Now, unfortunately, it's still an Archon build, and that's possibly the big complaint from Wizard players, that as long as you're in Archon form, you still have the same toolkit that you're dealing with, the same couple skills. And these builds generally always revolve around staying in Archon as long as possible. Nonetheless, at least you can look at your Archon and say, hey, mine isn't exactly the same as your Archon, as that guy's Archon. I got a different skill here, I got a different weapon here, and this is the best thing to happen to Wizards in a long time. And that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching, and leave a comment with your thoughts. What build are you going for this season? Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders to keep up with the Diablo 3 meta.